because my new book is Chinese translations. So hopefully they're listening over there in Beijing. But I'm going to start with a little selection from my book, In China with Harpo and Carl, because that is how I came to do some translations of a Chinese poet. Back in the mid-'80s, I had a PhD but no job, right? Because all the humanities departments had cut all their positions and so on. So I was looking through a job listing, and it said, wanted foreign experts, China. So I said, great, I'm a foreign expert. So in 1985, I went to China to teach at the Shanghai Institute of Foreign Trade. And in the process of all of that, I became friends with Kang Shui-pei. And she suggested, just for a lark, that we would translate Li Qingzhao, who's the most famous Chinese woman poet from the 12th century. So we did it just, for fun. And then last year, Empty Bowl agreed to publish it, and so it became the real thing. So I'm going to read from that, but I'm going to read a little bit from my memoir of living in China in the 1980s to just introduce you to the whole idea of different languages and trying to communicate. English as a foreign language. Miss Y is a new young teacher of Chinese. I meet her one day in the school's small, dingy bathroom, her head popping over the half-open stall door, smiling, her round face with the smoothness of steamed dumplings before they're crimped into folds like a drawstring bag. She speaks hardly any English, but descends on me now every day, but demanding and bashfully open as a puppy, eager to show her tricks, to read an English passage about pumas. And neither of us has ever seen a puma, but the words are magic, and the ability to pronounce them, to recognize them in this strange, flat language that repeats the same regulation signs, unlike her own graceful characters that stretch and swirl upon themselves like carp in a pond. We learn together, trading our foreign sounds. Each time I look at Miss Y, she pulls her nose, asking me in pantomime to name it for myself in Chinese, and once again in English for her. Our worlds are what we see and touch. Fan, shoes, jeans, purse, the cup and bowl from the school, enamel and ringing when the chopsticks knock, the empty bottom, that hollow music making a language of its own, simpler than this other hunger to name and feed our hearts with words. So that explains how I ended up with Plum Blossom Wine. And just to explain a couple things about Li Qingzhao, 12th century, and she did this poetry format in which the poems were, the rhythm of the poems was the rhythm of a folk tune. And so the poems didn't have an actual title, they just had to the song of blah, blah, blah. But interestingly, those songs are lost, so we have no idea what they sounded like now. But we tried to create our own little pattern with rhythm by deciding that we would do one English word per Chinese character. And so this created a set of constraints Which the fact that China doesn't have articles like a, and the, and doesn't really use personal pronouns helped in being able to skip a lot of words and leave them out. And we put this collection, this is not a complete collection of her poetry, but we put it together with the idea of a cycle through the year. She was of the nobility and well educated and writing poetry and doing calligraphy, and she was married to another poet, calligrapher, etc. But her husband was also a diplomat. So he was often away from home on diplomatic business. So in these poems, you'll see her talking about spring, which is usually when he was back, and how joyful she is during that period. And then as we move through the year, the poems mostly have to do with loneliness for Kim. And also there was a war where she lived, so she had to move to the south. So there's a nostalgia for the northern part of China. Spring's news to the tune of Proud Fishermen. Spring's news in the snow, plum blossoms, jewel white sprays, coated smooth as jade, in half bloom like a girl's face, tender in the yard, fresh as a woman from her bath. Look, even heaven loves the plum best, so let the moon increase her shine. Drink and drink this looking up. No rival for the gracious plum, no reason to fear wine. There are lots of plums in here, and also lots of wine, which is why we call it plum blossom wine. And I was looking up something on Google the other day. I was looking up something that had to do with plum blossom wine, and my goodness, there are some beautiful Chinese vases to the pattern of, it says plum blossom wine, and these, my co-translator, just sent me a scarf with the pattern of plum blossoms. So now we just have to figure out how to create some plum blossom wine. I'm a docent at the Chinese Garden, and I understand that one of the early benefactors used to come and gather up the plums there and make plum blossom wine, but she doesn't make the wine anymore. Okay, so we had a happy one. Now spring is over, and we have the empty bedroom to the tune of Lips Painted Red. Empty bedroom's a cage. Spring's dead. Drops of rain wilt flowers. I'm bent like willows, leaning all day over fences to watch for him. My mood bleaches grass, stretching withered into sky. Eyes pace the end of that long returning road. I said that she lived in the north and then had to move to the south to escape the war, and she never really got into liking the south. She was always nostalgic for the north. And that's what you'll see going on in this poem. And this is also an example of once or twice we decided to just leave the Chinese as Chinese, because it had such an, I can never say this word, onomatopoetic relation to what it was saying. So this is an example of that. It's called the Bajau Tree, and it's to the tune of Ugly Girl. Who planted the bajau tree? Fruit bigger than bananas. It shadows the yard. It shadows the yard. Leaves part, unfold, reluctant from the heart. Midnight rain starts beating my pillow. Din, di, lin, li, din, di, lin, li. Cursed tropic rhythm driving north bones to get up. And now we're coming all the way around into the fall. Autumn Chinese parasol to the tune of commemorating Qin's beauty. Below me now, confusion of mountains, plains stretching in thin, smoky light. Thin, smoky light where crows come home, dusk horns calling. Half-burnt incense, wine abandoned in the glass, wind rushing plane trees into fallen leaves. The fallen leaves again bring fall, recall my loneliness again. And I'm going to end the part from this book on a sad note, because I'm going to end the whole reading with a funny story. Now, this is one where the original poem really had a terrible beginning, and it just was not poetic at all. But we decided to go ahead and leave it that way. And since then, I've decided that it was a really good idea because the way this poem begins is the sort of thing every once in a while you just need to say. It's called Distress, and it's to the tune of Slowly Telling My Grievances, and you'll see why. Seek and pursue cheerless, cold, sad, wretched and wretched. Weather changing like a cloud, health hard to find. How can a few cups of mild wine fight these heavy evening winds? Wild geese flying when my heart's down. I know them from old days. The ground awash of gold, chrysanthemums all haggard. What's the point of picking flowers? Alone at windows, how can I sit till night falls? Plain leaves rustle in the wind. The evening comes, rain keeps coming. The word distress, a bowl too small to hold this. So I said that I would end up with something fun. And I haven't read from this in a really long time, The Adventures of Stout Mama, but I dug it out tonight, and I thought, in these times, we need a little of the Stout Mama wisdom. So this one is called Literary Weight Loss. Stout Mama doesn't understand the science of weight loss. Gaining is easy. The food comes to visit and, like poor relations, stays. Doritos in her thighs, the round blush of chocolate-covered cherries in her cheeks. Maintenance is also clear. The population stabilizes like a small town in Nebraska, and everybody else just drives through on the interstate. But once the food attaches to her bones, how does it leave? One day after lunch, Stout Mama wanders over to the college library, to the home ec section, which she thinks will be more scientific than the shelves on medicine. She looks up weight loss. This, she reads, means eating fewer calories than you burn. Stout Mama imagines tiny brush fires breaking out beneath her skin. Perhaps the book is right, for weight loss seems as uncontrollable to her as brush fires. Like an arsonist, she carefully selects her target, but the flames keep taking hold just up the block. To start a conflagration in her thighs, she has to starve her face and breasts to ashes. Still, Stout Mama finds it hard to understand the logic of such science. She wishes nature were more literary, more Shakespearean, as direct and clear as Shylock's pound of flesh. She knows exactly where she'd carve. Thank you very much, everybody.
The Leshek name for the creek that goes by our house is Dok Ukweb, and it means place of loon. And it's the creek that goes through Kubota Garden. Most of it is in a pipe, and we like to see that changed. And Bernadette Mayer, who wrote Midwinter Day on Winter Solstice 1978. She wrote a 122-page poem on Winter Solstice 1978. So as a ritual twice a year, I've been writing these day songs. A couple of them are chapbooks. One has been published by Carbonation Press, and I'm just going to read from that. And I'm going to start my clock so I don't go over. And we hope that everything's okay with Raul. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful that Leopoldo continues to make this happen. I'm grateful for this space, C&P Coffee House. There are fewer and fewer spaces like this, so let's savor this and patronize, buy tea, buy a drink or something. So turn on that. And Day Song of Thoughtless Openness. 5:43 a.m. There is no other heaven beyond writing. Lee Seong-bok. And so with 2% of the waning grain moon left, with an AQI of 50, likely from wildfires, smokestacks, the day song seeks to enter September in a heaven of its own making sense of what just happened, why summer's lease with Lee Seong-bok. And so with 2% of the waning grain moon left, with an AQI of 50, likely from wildfires, smokestacks, the day song seeks to enter September in a heaven of its own making sense of what just happened, why summer's lease was revoked, how the ink went out, just as the last postcard to Art was realized. Art, finally back at the House of Hummingbirds, still high from the emerald-flavored northern lights over Desolation Sound. August 28, 2024. Your cell phone sees the aurora borealis better than you do. Hashtag American Sentences. There in the sky, the path of elders, Arthur, and find it hard to believe you've trouble tracking that. Knowing freed from the agenda of possession and control is how Bringhurst put it once, and control one of those persistent delusions. August, they, runs out of steam in a flurry of postcards, and me too, tracking path of the crescent moon as it rises over Desolation Sound as seen from Galley Bay, hoping after all this to achieve a state of what Ray calls thoughtless openness, as my ink runs out. Blessings, Paul. My ink on the typewriter actually did run out, and I had to put the last part in red, so that's how that came up. We want as much time in heaven before our ink runs out. And we see the ink levels in friends who'd better get that pen going. Squeeze out what's left of the cereal only they can write and no one can finish. One can finish August, all 56 days of it, with days of 83-degree highs, 10 above normal, says the weather app. And we're going to have a talk about normality in the Anthropocene. Just as Israel recovers 6 hostage bodies from Gaza, Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland, one of them, the crime of attending a concert. Israeli bombs, says Hamas, tens of thousands of Palestinians killed, says the Post, and famine-like conditions. You don't have to think of it as poetry. You don't have to think at all about what kind of writing you're doing. You're writing some kind of unself-conscious open utterance, being clear as you can or as muddled as you want. You're not writing for anybody. It's spontaneous, is how Joanne Kiger put it. Thoughtless openness until the ink runs out. The heaven of writing, where nothing ever happens, except emerald green aurora borealis, the drug of the northern dawn, with a waning crescent grain moon rising up from behind Isla Redonda, piercing the aurora borealis, our drug of choice, as we savor what ink we've left. See if we can ready our weary Anthropocene bodies for what surely will include dancing. This dance at the heart of being, sings Robert. This music at the heart of thinking, sings Fred. These chopped off maiden hands grown back at midnight, as Sharon knew, with or without the waning grain moon, with or without auroras boreales sobre Isla Redonda, as Dionisio Alcalá Galiano would have put it. Your cell phone sees the shadow of a September sky and how it's cast on an upward angle better than you do as you're managing ink-consuming social mierda, squandering what little thoughtless openness you've been able to achieve between sunrises and stat checking, between August's last dying halo and responding to health insurance denials of benefits, between cafe evictions for the crime of typing a poem for a dying friend, this ancient technology too loud for the dog groomers and Australian gentrifiers who are determined to erase what little's left of the Scumberland we knew and loved. Using a typewriter in a cafe, Peter says, "You monster." Sunrise, 6:44. Breakfast of chia overnight oats, berry medley with extra Oregon blueberries, bee pollen, raisin cranberry bread, toast, and coffee with maple syrup. 7, it's important to write this stuff down because you'll never remember it. 7:23 a.m. Wilderness as something that thinks, Ray sings. If not a mind, then a considered strategy we could get inside of, were we to put the Kingfisher over the YouTube, if we could slow from the speed of capital to the speed of August, pull ourselves from the gravity of control. We might start by washing our face. We might start by watching heron fly over I-5. We might take the first day of the 9th month, which was the 7th, and jab our meat hooks into it for 1 New York minute. See what dance possibilities there are, disassembling for a few seconds of heaven. The noise stops us from harvesting what's left in our ink bin. And it is later than we think. And Richard knows better than any of us. Richard, who is tired of this bitter illusion, tired of the tumors carving up his esophagus and assorted innards, tired of the parlor tricks and attempted death defiance allopathy has to offer, tired. Allopathy, the antithesis of poetry, and therefore heaven. Poetry, the will to live one's life and die one's death, changing live and die from passive to active, says Lee. Between coughing jags and eventually loss of blood. Dying as a poem, the end of the series, the way to compose the start of your decomposition. Charlie in a dream of Lawrence Ferlinghetti forgetting to tell him he should have shot Gregory Corso. Poetry, the clutter of one's life as we chew through it, selecting hunks we call meaning while hanging on best we can between box score consumption and earwax removal, between day songs and after postcards, between glimpses of the mountains as they start the slow transition to the color purple as one of our daily summer astonishments. Day song as breakthrough in our daily practice, with only so much ink, so many minutes, with so much noise through which we must cut. It is not a poet's job to simplify the mystery of existence or its lexicon, Brenda tried to tell us, and that all a writer needs are 4 true readers, and one of them can be a tree. And yet we go on avoiding death, avoiding the dance, refusing to read our poems to trees, domesticating ourselves by letting the machines make us weak, forgetting the seasons, not sending back the hype, not savoring the islands. Isla Redonda, as the moon rises up, the waning grain moon crescent casting moonlight reflections on Desolation Sound, as we all do. Minute reflections of what we once considered other and now know as nothing more than considered strategy or thoughtless openness, or the last gulp of lukewarm maple syrup-flavored coffee on the way to the next leg of the stumble, the harvest, the day song. 8:06 a.m. 8:29 a.m. And then the return of Kingfisher, machine gunning beyond the depth charge, beyond the copacetic, around the corner of the peninsula which harbors Galley Bay, Kingfisher couple. Single Kingfisher in the beaver pond of Cumberland beyond the Lameway and home to thousands of hungry mosquitoes who seem to prefer my sugary blood over the gluten and dairy-free blood of a certain Canadian. Kingfisher who shows the noble humans how to earn a wilderness badge of self, how to settle into that jewel of Indra's net, that pejorative state or condition of the land inhabited only by wild animals, pulled out of self and time, Ray says, into a condition of thoughtless openness, or watching the house finch bathing in an improvised back deck bird bath, forgetting itself. We could carve out a space in the midst of delusion to see the amateur ikebana with the tight-fisted peony she arranged in an old sake bottle. Or we could forget the small s self and see what returns. It might be green, it might be nature, it might be energized particles from the sun slam into Earth's upper atmosphere at speeds of up to 45 million miles an hour, 72 million clicks, but our planet's magnetic field redirects the particles toward the poles while we cry, or take photos, or get back in the hot tub, or rummage through vitamin bottles for psilocybin capsules, or try and render that awe into a high-energy construct where the heat of feeling warms the intellect, which may be asking too much. But we don't ask. We practice letting go of what Michael called the parasite of personality, which is me driving the car from Horseshoe Bay to Anacortes. Continuous practice of the time being, as we all are. Time beings, Uji in Dogen's parlance. For the time being, the earth and sky, which was Jan's fear. For the time being, a staff or a whisk. For the time being, a memory of Kubota sake after 64 days of sobriety. For the time being, no August to fritter away what ink we've left on attempted muse control. No one can drag heaven into the back and have one's way with it. For the time being, what may be lenticulars cling to Isla Redonda's highest peak, of which we only see that above the sound. All time is being. All time is ink, the self arrayed for now into the form of the entire world. Reflect now on not just seeing stars, but seeing current constellations so vivid they show up on cell phone photos, stunning the PCC cashier. Reflections of the noble ancestors chewing on something very much like this and now pointing us in the direction of the medicine we need now, however that manifests. Maybe as Howard Levy's harmonica, maybe as Shakti Konakals, maybe as hearing Jan on Quadra say something like, "The consorts of testosterone have forgotten how to sing." How far from heaven are they? How much do they hate the poem? How will they extricate their children from the fate they seem to have swallowed? How in dire need of a bleach white madrone branch are we when in this state, a deep practice of the real, a kind of earthly sanity, a climb up the peninsula ridge, to wonder about a pine growing out a nurse log's root ball, or scrub pine, kinnikinnick, haircap moss, cushion bush, American parsley fern, a salal leaf or three colored with their journal of the season of no heat dome, of the pioneer fire, of your attention being focused on the practice of attention fracking. Don't say we didn't warn you. Attention fracking is the natural prayer of El Diablo, And now a long quote about it. Extractive profit models amount to the systematic fracking of human beings, pumping vast quantities of high-pressure media content into our faces to force up a spume of the vaporous and intimate stuff called attention, which now trades on the open market. Increasingly powerful systems seek to ensure that our attention is never truly ours. And hence the heaven of the poem, of praxis, of noticing the about-to-die dahlia, which in Cascadia is not black and is past its prime, but still in command of its faculties, as if it were the flower commander-in-chief. How we arrange our own truly human misery, as Kosho knows, is your ego. How we domesticate ourselves in gourmet samsara and tax breaks for the 1%, and luxury items and social mierda, and avoid the portable wilderness of thoughtless openness and wonder at saw-wing flight. Yes, those by the marsh of Saltery Bay, once a Japanese salmon saltery and fish packing plant, now a place to ferry south after awe at midday saw wings, whose flight patterns are the same heaven the poem is, with similar lineation, who previews our next lifetime, whose life is play as example to rat racers who inevitably conclude rats are winning, and so redirect themselves to the art of poetry postcards and non-cafe typing explosions and non-conventional lineation at its least logical and most carless, faith as a form of humility, being as a dance through the blue feedback of one's life, defense from attention fracking through the soul building of Nag Champa voiceovers, retreat into the tribe of two if necessary. Here's my tribe of Cascadians, never far from the sea, sometimes eating Japanese pancakes, okonomiyaki, for lunch, sometimes being evicted for typing on a typewriter in a cafe. Your typing is upsetting the dog walker. Your tribe is high on Genmai cha. Sometimes we remember our vow to end delusions, and sometimes we remember it's not delusional to try that each day, each season, each oral flash of the kingfisher who signals summer's last gasp, who understands the treasure in the fetid nest of rejectamenta. May Sally and Barb's sodium levels be hereafter fine. May Ma learn why she smoked for 65 years. May Linda find joy in the room, and may Andrew forsake MAGA as they will forsake him. Oh, my rabbit queen, who this May 8th became more aerodynamic. Were our tribe to sink to 2 and 1 rabbit, we'd still sit in the cloud room of lakeside bliss we've cultivated, and you tend after 10 years of tribe making. The cricket on asphalt in late August morning rain is not singing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'll take a number from 1 to 24. 21. All right. This is the self-portrait in haiku. Paul mentioned publishing a book with Carbonation Press. This is my book that just came out with Carbonation Press. Thank you. You can come to Hugo House on January 8th at 7 p.m. and hear even more of this if your interest is piqued. Do we have to pick a number? Maybe. I like that aspect of reading poetry. Self-portrait in haiku, hiking to Gothic Basin Cascades. Clambered Gothic trails to bottom of sea, pearl of clam. Pearl blue lake at peak at bottom of stained fog unfurls. Cascadian blue, blueberries sweet as can be, beneath gaze upcast, upon stars to fall. Follow dreams of conifer trees. Play, plane overhead, up, place of mix it up. All have names, we don't know them yet. They call and they call. On the trail, a bird small, gray to blend into stone. Calling, calling, song of the mountains, elk bugle, calling all. Thank you. I'll take one more, between 1 and 24, that's not 21. 18? 8. Now you have to wait for me to count. Thankfully, it's not that high. This is self-portrait as a knot. As in your shoelaces, which I don't happen to have right now. Self-portrait as a knot. I reach into the pocket of my pants, and with my fingers I feel my headphones, tangled. Per usual, the handiwork of the knot, elves, is evident. Even to the untrained, I unravel the cord before the music starts playing, so the lyrics don't get jumbled. And the notes are clear as Louis's trumpet. My tongue won't get tied while I sing along. Oh, how Cat and Frog would love that. Cat would dance jazz in between my taste buds while Frog played a broken rhythm on the tied-up strings of an upright bass. In front of trees of green, on one knee I lean over to pull light blue and cloud white striped high tops onto my feet. I bring the laces behind my heel and the sky blue star twice, then loop them together. In the dark sacred night, galaxies throw lassos, light years long at herds of moons. The ropes wink where not elves weave and twinkle, where cat and frog pluck a blues on the web. Thank you.
My name is Neil Vincent Scott, and I paint pictures with words. Every Christmas, for as long as I can remember, I've written a Christmas poem, put it in a Christmas card, and sent it out to friends and relatives and what have you. So in the spirit of the season, I'm going to read the last 4, including the one I wrote this year. Going back to 2021, this one's called Christmas After All. After all we've been through, once again it's Christmas time. Yet another chance to celebrate the true meaning of the Hollywood holiday season, replete with music that transports each heart to memories long, long ago. Lean into the joy and feel the excitement. Breathe in the enchantment, for today is a Christmas gift which is never guaranteed. For now is the hour and now is the season. Take a quiet moment to dream like a child and put your memories on parade, holding hands with time and walking beneath the December moon as Christmas canes and cross-country plains carry hearts to another place in time. It's time for children, and those of us who still celebrate the child within, with wide-eyed wonder, giving and receiving the kinds of gifts, the gifts of kindness and hope, the gift of compassion, the gifts of jubilance and joy, for it's Christmas time after all. The world continues to teeter and totter, stumble and stagger, and sadness and sorrow abound. Beautify the blessings. Wrap each gift in glorious gratitude, placing them gently under the Christmas moon, nestled in delicious memories of times gone by, illuminated by the promise of tomorrow with hope unrelenting. 2022, Christmas magic, Christmas love. The whirlwind of time sweeps through December with love and magic and love, interchangeable and pretty much identical inside the treasure chest of time, filled with memories and dreams of Christmas now and then. Fairy tales, fables, and foolishness, old bearded men, myths and mayhem, and delicious familiar carols that never grow old. We all create chronicles splashed with wonder and whimsy of a kinder, gentler time as we celebrate today's children, their innocence, their anticipation, their love of life, and the mysteries of magic in belief. May we create new memories this Christmas that will be passed down in the Decembers to come as each of us contemplates our inner wonder. My Christmas wish for you is simple and guileless. Hold fast to those you love. Find and celebrate the birth of a child, the birth of belief, the precious gifts of time and health, of presence and presence, of love and magic, of magic and love, of Christmas now and then. Last year was called This Christmas. Once upon this Christmas, take the time to remember who and what and when, in a wonderful childlike way, unscathed by fear, believing only in love and goodness. Be the Christmas present in the Christmas present. Turn off the news, turn on the season, listen to the quiet voice from deep in your soul. Give yourself to others, wrapped in goodness and grace. Receive the same from others with an open and loving heart, putting sorrow away for another day. May all your nights be soft, silent nights. Unwrap your present in the ever-present, knowing without question the greatest gifts are forgiveness, acceptance, faith, hope, and love. In your magical mistletoe moments, frolic and play in a childlike way as you celebrate your inner child, holding hands with yesterday, making love with today, dreaming the dreams of tomorrow. This Christmas, open the present of now. And my final one was this year, called Christmas Love. The bright colored lights adorn the neighborhood homes, reflecting winter warmth and wonder, and a river of memories cascading across time with familiar Christmas carols providing the soundtrack. Breathe in the beauty, the wonder, the awe, as your heart carries you back to Christmases long ago. Breathe out the stress of the season, with all its pressure, anxiety, and unreal expectations that seem to become greater every year. In each Christmas breath you breathe, be your personal prayer. In the solitude of your soul, lovingly decorated with remembrances of long ago, when innocence was divine, when youth was an unimagined gift. Celebrate jingle bell wishes through the eyes of a child, and together with time, unwrap the true meaning of Christmas in all its delicious majesty. Look inside your heart. Give the gifts of kindness, benevolence, holiday smiles, and warm, meaningful embraces that cost nothing, that can mean everything. And call to mind, call to heart, those gone but never forgotten, and those who are getting older. Reach out now, for later is often too late. Thank you very much.
Okay. Unconditional. When she gives me that look, the one half in awe and half in disgust, I often wonder which half of the divide I am on. It may depend on the time of day, or what the weather is like, or if the expected treat is to her liking. It may depend on the company I keep, or if I am caught petting the neighbor's cat while I am off leash, or if I say the dreaded word bath. No matter, she is tolerant of my failings and has had lots of practice telling me I am forgiven. Yeah. In stir, the man squirms at the fringe of the farmer's market, claims his cranny, and wild smiles a grimace. His quarrels turn to spittle across the sidewalk. Viscous, thick as lubricant, his words drool from the corners of his downturned mouth onto the front of his threadbare shirt. Leaning forward, he defies gravity, hovering face down as if feet are locked in concrete. Jerking violently, he straightens, then slides down the side of the building that guards his back until he sits in quasi-lotus. Tourniquet, he mumbles. Just that one word escapes as he pulls a grimy bag with a smiley face over his head. To have not and have. He lunges onto our bus, then plunges his hand deep into the Metro mask dispenser, pulls out a fistful wad of disposable protectors, turns, squint-eyed, at fellow travelers, proclaims, "These are mine," as if daring any to take issue with his assertion. And when he throws one down like a gauntlet, not one accepts his challenge. Seagull and crow. Caw, caw, cussing catches my attention. Birds of different feathers fistfight overhead, then dive to the grass. Full of bluster, they fluster and flutter up and down. Neither gives in until they drop in exhaustion, still tug-o-warring on the same precious scrap. I feel slight embarrassment as I recognize how they mimic man. And finally, redraft. My city is an unfinished poem of perpetual progression. Rife with never-ending edits, my city is forever dissatisfied with the elegant line that once drew praise or the one perfect word that now lives only in memory. My city is an unfinished poem habitually searching for the rhythm of the streets and scansion of its citizens. Line breaks become rearranged, and whole stanzas are threatened with deletion unless a local laureate champions an historic designation to at least preserve the facade. My city is an unfinished poem in conflict with itself. Traditional metrics disdain free verse, and prose claims no rules apply. Neighborhoods are increasingly enjammed, while run-on sentences ignore stops. My city is an unfinished poem of propertied pantoums and affluent villanelles, relentlessly repeating that the epic poetry of the city requires a partitioning of limericks. My city is an unfinished poem divided by translations marching for acceptance among anapest and dactyl dominance. New variations eager to expand convention clash with classical forms. My city is an unfinished poem in continuous slam competition with other unfinished urban compositions and recreation myths. My city is an unfinished poem of mourning and celebrating in its loop of demise and rebirth. My city is an unfinished. Thank you.
Good poetry enunciates struggle, colors the sky, seeks and speaks truth to both you and I. A song of soul rung to furrow a path, its beauty, its utility, describing our odyssey, approaching the mystery, himself beyond all words. Dry bones. Dry bones enfleshed by holy command. Take on souls, take on water, producing red cells in marrow depths to build and to fuel bold blood. Dry bones, strewn for ages, cross a chalken bowl of ground, raised to dance in sunlight, then as broth be boiled down, to rise again when called into blue skies. This the tale dry bones tell as they witness love. Hawk. The hawk flies on. He's over the highway when we travelers spot him from our car. Conversation halts as we take in wing colors that reach, speak as if to say, brown tan, eagle tan, and brown tan, eagle tan. The hawk takes in the colors of our car and the others that reach, speak as if to say, blue, yellow, yellow, blue, and blue, yellow, yellow, blue. Hours later, the hawk, far from the road, hunts above a prairie quilt of scrub grass, brush, red sage, while heading in setting sun toward a ridgeline, red-edged gray, that reaches, speaks, as if to say, purple, orange, orange lingers, then purple, orange, fade to black. The hawk, sighting a prairie dog darting from its hole, aims angled wings through silent night, slitting sky, while we travelers, having left our car, muse in a motel room about our sighting of the hawk and the passing of our friend Nick, a half-Irish, half-Inuit elder who spread wisdom, grace, and peace to so many hungry ones through the years. The room's brass table lamps, fluted shades, and muted blades of gilded rays that reach, speak, as if to say, yellow gold, golden days, and yellow gold to him be praise. When the hawk arrives, the prairie dog is gone, so the hawk flies on. The hawk flies on, as will we travelers when comes the dawn, as will all travelers when comes the dawn.
I run a writers group called Start Liners Writers. It meets at every Tuesday at Lake Forest Park, Third Place Commons. I have flyers over there to that effect. And man, I've been getting some good material out of this group. I just realized. I was going to read this one, but now I think I'm going to read a different one. Let me just get my act together here. This is untitled, but we'll just use the title of the start line, which was In Autumn. In autumn, there's a feeling of slipping. All those wet leaves under your shoes, the clock fallen back, the daylight sliding away. Do you have your affairs in order? Which ones should you wrap up? And which ones begin? Someone to keep you warm in the winter, or at least to shovel the walkway. The season is burning down the last of your reserves. The berry jam stacked up in tidy rows in the basement, the quilts brought down from the attic, and you prowl the house looking for leaks at the first rains, including the leak in your heart. In autumn, they scatter from their summer picnics like flies and return to shelter, to different routines, to the quiet books in the study, the cups of tea, the dregs of the last celebrations washing away down the storm drain. Oh, the irony of the phoenix-colored trees, the yellow, red, orange grandstanding parades, each day tossing off more layers. As the vegetable beds get rewrapped, it's time for deliberate warming of savory seasonal scents, hands outstretched for second helpings to help us through this annual dyeing, the donning of wool, the drying of socks and umbrellas in autumn. Everything reaches for one last hurrah before subsiding, before the sheltering. Autumn is actually my favorite season. And then we get to winter, which is like what we're in now. And so I'm going to read a Christmas poem. 'Twas the night before Christmas, updated and abridged. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the place the devices were glowing, all tracked with a trace. Our wet clothes were dumped on an old kitchen chair. The dryer was broken, repairmen don't care. The children were hopped up on sugary snacks, though at least they weren't out in the hood smoking crack. Mama with her iPad and I with my phone. Everybody at home, everybody alone. When out from the street there arose a loud noise. 'Twas a man in a red suit and some of his boys. Hey, Carlos, hey, Chico, hey, Trey and Big Jock, get those pies from the back before they freeze to the box. 4 anchovy mushroom, 1 sausage with brie. Did the app get it mixed up, or was it just me? The red-suited man had red cheeks and beer breath, and the pizzas were cold as the cold hand of death. You're lucky we're working at all tonight, bro, said the red-suited man. Fuck, there's 3 feet of snow. The pies came inside in a pizza parade, and the kids came down quickly, all ready to raid. That's 99-20, the driver proclaimed, and my eyes popped like gunshots. My outrage inflamed. This order is wrong. Get these pies out of here. Try working instead of ODing on beer. The man grabbed the slices from all the kids' hands and strapped back the boxes with 5 rubber bands. His brows, how they furrowed, his lips, how they snarled, his hair, how unkempt, and his front teeth, how gnarled. You'll regret this, he threatened while shaking his fist. From now on, you people are on my shit list. He sprang in the van to his team, gave a yell, and they all drove away like a bat out of hell. And I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, toss me one of them brews. Fuck, it's been a shit night.
First, I'm going to speak. I haven't spoken before because I'm self-conscious about my voice. Can you understand me? Yes. Okay. Hi, poetry lovers. This will be my last open mic participation. I want to thank Leopoldo, the genius organizer of Poetry Bridge, and his wife, Charmaine, who incidentally had been my painting student, for allowing me to have my friends help me in my recitations. Also, Leopoldo made arrangements for a group of 5 poets to meet at my house for critiques since last February. I am so grateful. Thank you, Leopoldo. 2 of the poets in the critique group have been spending countless hours with me, editing and arranging poems I've been writing since the 80s. I'm a painter by career, but I've been writing poems too. The God's willing and the sky doesn't fall. I'll be publishing my poetry collection titled Magpie with Kuhn Woon's Goldfish Press sometime next year. I'd like to acknowledge Zach Charles and Corey Fowler for their care and extra time devoted to editing my poems. I'm eternally in their depth. Please give them a hand again. Okay,
This is my good friend.
I am not going to read tonight because if these are your last words, you are going to say them yourself. So you are going to read your own.
I don't have the poems with me.
Last words are the most important words.
He is such an SOB.
That's why he's your friend.
Okay, well, you have to stay and listen to me. Okay. All right. I was raised in Pomeroy in Garfield County, Washington State. The area is a wheat farming region, and it is called the Palouse. The events in this first poem occurred there when I was a child and later on as a young adult. It's called Seed Wheat. Kate and I bent in seed wheat, uprooting stray rye, those stepchildren in seed stock. We were roguing the wheat, our job at the end of the summer. Her giggle tapped the tops of grain like skipped pebbles as we bobbed down the hill, joking, singing, throwing clods. Then we grew quiet. The wind dribbled down the hills and pushed waves of wheatgrass in a surf of soft, hissing green. 2 summers later, all the world's rain rolled off those green hills. Thunder rattled our windows and flashed in our mirrors. My sister curled into a trance. My grandmother lit holy candles. Kate said her valley was still until her dad heard mud and rock roaring. They barely escaped. The cloudburst ground out part of their family, their barns and their farmhouses. Kate's Uncle John dangled dead from a tree. Erosion and wind rasped those hills down. My dad pointed to hilltops, red alkali earth glistening like burns on the land's wrinkled skin. Our Irish setter ranged over the stubble in autumn. I didn't shoot, just cradled the birds in my pack. In the basement that evening, Dad gutted the quail, hot smell of innards, his knife bloody and stuck with feathers. Her children were sleeping when Kate killed herself with a knife in the kitchen. 3 babies, no husband, and living on welfare. Last time I was home, I crawled under the wire to climb the high hill where I crouched by sagebrush and shouted friends' names. Our stories tossed down on the sharp gusts of air. Kate's youngest son now sprints in state tournaments. Young athletes, I see him in dreams. His feet barely touching the top blades of wheat. His white body shines bright in the glare of sheet lightning, and he shouts as he vaults just out of reach of the ravaging wall, the mowing reptilian water. And the last one is traditional sestina. And sestina has 6 words in certain sequences for 6 stanzas. And then the last is a triplet where all those words are used. And I have used, thanks, Charlie. I have used variants of the word brush, snake, moon, fire, paint, and women. And it's called Pursuit, and it's about being pursued and stalked, which is especially frightening for women. The slashes, those scratches, mesquites brushed against her, and the branches like snakes, a snake path of tears. When the afternoon moon rose above the choke creek and sun-fired crimson glaze on the water, painted red shine on the face of the woman. Fish. I was the fish in the pool at her feet, that woman who pitched through the eddies and brush, her blood streaked like paint in water, her hair like black snakes in the current. She fell and splashed fire as her face broke the surface, a fighting pale moon. I watched her shadow. Oh, this is lizard. I watched her shadow, moon's twin in the water. The woman rose, her mouth glistened like fire. The sun brushed vermilion on rocks and the snakes, and the insects flashing like slashes of paint. Coyote. She scrambled in painted edges of light. I looked down a moon trap in council with snakes. Crouched on the ledge, I regarded the woman as she lunged through the sagebrush, scattering sand like embers from fire. Deer. When she burst through my clearing, I leaped like fire up to the cliff spirits painted by ancients who brushed ancestor shapes in the rocks. In those days, the moon smiled when we called her a great shining woman. We danced, men, deer, the drawings, and snakes. Horse. I carried the man as we followed the creek, a night snake that coiled through the fiery walls of the canyon. As we entered the clearing, he sighted the woman and called her. She wept in the shadows behind the rock paintings. He started his fire and led me to water, then waited in moonlight. Defeated, she crept out to lie on the blankets and brush. Owl. My wings brushed the night while ancestor paintings snaked down from the cliffs to dance over the fire. The man tilts her face away from the moon. The woman cries out.
Paul, I have a segue for you. A Chilean poet, Nicanor Parra, in Antipoesias, said, "Poet's task is to improve on a blank page. I do not think that's possible." I have a couple of almost Christmas poems from the refugee camp in Austria. We did not run to Egypt, but you will fill in the blanks. These are the prologue poems before the main body of poems starts. With life on hold, waitings is the only thing to do in the refugee camp. We wait. When we are awake, we wait. When we are asleep, we are waiting. It's been 8 weeks since we sent our applications to the US Embassy in Vienna. Have they gotten our letter? Will they reply? What's taking so long? There's not much else to do, we can do, except keep waiting. But Kreuzen was a small village. Refugees could legally work, but there were no jobs. One full day, the sun shone on my friend and me. A local Bauer needed a couple of guys to garden, to graben. I'm sorry. Why am I not using my glasses? Poems look better. Graben sounded like Polish grabić, meaning to rake. We showed up bright and early at Bauer's doorstep. Instead of rakes, he handed us shovels and showed us a ditch he needed to widen. With no working clothes, no galoshes, we were no match for the muddy ditch. We apologized to the Bauer and left with our tails tucked neatly between our legs. We are going to Vienna for an interview. From Bad Kreuzen to the US Embassy in Vienna is 2.5-hour drive. At first, we worry about the interview. Will they accept us? We remember people who have gone to the States and those who got rejected. What if? After an hour of riding, we get nauseated by diesel fumes from a beat-up Volkswagen minibus. The rest of the way, we concentrate on not throwing up. And I'd like to end with a Texas poem. 3 new graduates drove from Champaign-Urbana to Dallas for the library conference, a great place to interview for a job. It's my first time in Texas. We were put up in Denton, a 38-mile drive to the convention center. A huge sign, eggs any way you want, catches our attention. We pull up for breakfast. My friends are going continental, and I'm getting 2 soft-boiled eggs. They finished their meals. Mine was nowhere in sight. An embarrassed waiter whispers in my ear, "The cook doesn't know how to do your eggs. Just drop them onto a tablespoon, then into boiling water, and take out 3 minutes later." 15 minutes later, a plate lands on in front of me. Soft boiled eggs have been scooped out of their shells and are quivering on my plate. I ask the waiter to take their sign down.
Hi, everybody. This isn't a poem. It's a nonfiction essay about a road trip I took with my sister, who's 15 years older than myself. And it was shortly after her divorce. And we were going to Colorado Springs to see her daughter in a play, a summer stock program that she was in. And there's we went to see her, and you'll hear that in a minute. It's called Go West, Young Women, Go West. In 1980, the year Urban Cowboy played at movie theaters, my sister Carol and I took a road trip from Illinois to the Rocky Mountains, cowboy country, in her hulky station wagon. We wanted to see her daughter Mary, who is performing in a summer stock theater production of Gypsy in Colorado Springs. While out west, we also wanted to check out Aspen. Go west, young women, go west, I thought. Neither of us had taken a road trip like this before, and in a spirit of adventure, Carol suggested we try camping. Our first stop was in Ogallala, Nebraska. Since we could not find an official camping site, my sister parked near a dry field of grass. The field seemed as good a place as any to pitch our tent. We hauled out her son's camping gear. The tent was small and basic, a tad bigger than a pup tent. Despite its simplicity, we had a hard time fitting the tent poles together. We MacGyvered the stubborn poles by using Vaseline petroleum jelly to get them to fit. The tent sagged, but it sufficed. Since the sun was still out, we explored the field. We had overlooked a historical marker. Boot Hill, it said, so named for the cowboys, settlers, and drifters of the 1870s who were buried with their boots on. According to the marker, the first burial there was a mother and child. Later, when the railroad came to Ogallala, the Texas Trail opened the area to cowboys and horse thieves running afoul of the law. Others were killed by refighting the Civil War or for questioning a gambler's winning hand. Bodies were placed in canvas sacks and lowered into shallow graves. Some of the dead in Boot Hill have been removed. The unclaimed or unknown remain there. Que sorpresa, I muttered to my sister. We are sleeping in a cemetery. She told me to shut up. Her life had enough surprises, and she had little patience for my spouting off in Italian. She had already ended a 20-year marriage and raised my niece and 2 nephews while continuing to teach high school English. She said my whining about sleeping in a cemetery was superstitious and crazy. It's just a field, she said. So I bucked up, and we turned into our sagging tent with the ghosts of Boot Hill nearby. I was not a happy camper. The sleeping bag I was tucked into smelled of my nephew's dog. I dreamt of boots drifting over a field. What happened to them? I woke to darkness, feeling something poke my side. Was it a boot, or a gun, or the ghost of an outlaw? Carol fared better. Since her divorce, she had been taking Valium. It calmed her enough so she could sleep, she said, but we were both groggy when the sun rose. We gave camping our best shot, but agreed that from then on, hotels are us. We hit the road and just outside Colorado Springs saw our first mountain, Pikes Peak. Is that real, I thought? It seemed out of a dream, a mirage or a stage prop someone had plopped down to hover over Colorado Springs. We had never seen a city surrounded by mountain peaks. My recollection of Colorado Springs is of some summertime musicians, artists, and jugglers. And feet. I often observe feet. It has a lot to do with my ex-brother-in-law. Why bother with shoes, he teased me. Your feet are so long, just wear the shoe boxes. Ha ha. At any rate, a fair share of people in Colorado Springs encased their feet in cowboy boots. I don't know how or where we connected with my niece Mary, but I do remember the night we saw her in Gypsy. I looked for her on stage. Where is she? I asked Carol. She's inside the cow costume, she said. My niece was tucked inside the rear end of a cow. When she swished the cow's tail, I cracked up laughing. The day after Gypsy, the 3 of us piled into the station wagon to venture out of the city. I regaled them with stories in the car, how a friend in Chicago dragged me to a bluegrass bar where we rode a mechanical bull which messed up my spine, how I had a pair of fry boots, and how the same friend who suggested we ride the mechanical bull invited me to join her at a Willie Nelson concert, how I hobbled, toes squeezed into the fry's tight, pointed tips as we made our way to the bleachers at Soldier Field. Urban cowboy days were torture. Thus far, Carol had been calm as she navigated. We discovered a tiny village surrounded by rolling hills, thick forest, and a sparkling river. It was the Deckers, known for world-class fly fishing. I am not sure how much time we spent there, but I have a photo of my niece standing in the river looking nothing like the back end of a cow, more like a graceful fawn. We left the Deckers to check out Aspen, an international jet-setting town. How could we resist? Carol drove on the way to Aspen. As the road curved more and more, my sister's calm dissolved. The Valium was wearing off. Carol's jitters were palpable. Sue, there's no guardrail, became her spoken mantra. Indeed, there was no guardrail. It became my mantra, too, when I looked out the window. What had the state of Colorado been thinking? I was grateful I was not the driver. As my sister white-knuckled the steering wheel, I suggested that maybe her fear was the station wagon's fault. It had bad karma. Had she read Stephen King's Christine? Perhaps the divorce mobile, chosen by her ex-husband, was possessed and jealous. Maybe the car needed a spirit cleansing. She rolled her eyes. That is crazy. It's just a car, she said. Okay, I have a big imagination. At least I got a laugh from my niece. She was next to me in the front seat. As we drew closer and closer to Aspen, we had no opportunity to shift seats to give Carol more space. Somehow, my angst-ridden sister managed to get us to Aspen in one piece, and I had an opportunity to snap a photo of our Rocky Mountain High. Who will drive us down the mountain became my sister's subsequent worry. What, me worry? Did I want to send the three of us careening down a mountain in a car I felt was possessed? Of course not. All I know is that despite Boot Hill, I had seen my niece in a play and had pitched a tent with my sister. And that's it.
I am Gordy. I was raised in Selah, Washington. And it's by Yakima. And unfortunately, my dad had a serious accident. And my mother, in a gifted, wonderful way, decided to buy me a fly tying outfit, a kit. And it was unbelievable because, like, I'm an opportunistic kind of guy, right, Jane? My wife is here. And I was having to dig worms and try to catch grasshoppers. Anybody tried to catch grasshoppers in their lives?
Yeah.
Unbelievably difficult. And I'd only get like 6 or 7, and then I would go down to the river. And to be real honest with you, the Yakima River nourished me during my dad's 3 years in the hospital. And from that, I was 12 years old. I'm 75. 63 years I've been fly fishing. I've read my poems to the Writers on the Fly at the Emerald City, but I have an obsession, and it's fly fishing. And thank you for mentioning fly fishing already. So I'm going to read just 2 poems. And I must say, how many people fly fish? Oh my gosh. Some, huh? Okay. Well, you're going to have patience with my obsession, okay? Because this is 63 years of finding my soul. And I want to just stop before I go here. How many people, the woman in the orange, I'll just pick on you. What just tweaks your soul in a wonderful way? Mine is fly fishing. Yours is? Sunset. Huh? The sunset. The sunset. How about you? What tweaks your soul?
Currently, it's coming to poetry readings.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Writing. Yeah. So for me, it's like my soul started talking to me in a way that I'd never had happen before. And so I would go over to the Madison River in Montana, and I'd fly fish there, and I'd come back here to my job, and I would be absolutely going, what's going on? I kept hearing, like, come back to the Madison, come back. And one of my first poems is called Soul Dust. And what I think is that when our soul gets tweaked, our soul gives off a little soul dust that is radioactive that always calls us back to that beautiful place. And so this poem is about that, and it's called Soul Dust, all right? And I love David Wyeth, and sometimes he reads his lines twice, and so don't be thrown off if I do that. I don't know if I'm gonna do it, but here we go. In fly fishing times, my soul flakes, freely attaching, swirling, splashing in the bankside high grass and rocky wooded branch river piles. My aerial plankton particles float into them. My aerial plankton particles float into them, into the Madison River sun-baked sky rocks. At home, all haze with urban clamor, my gossamer soul bits. At home, all haze and that urban clamor, my gossamer soul bits vibrate sacred signals from the loggy Rainbow Valley Lodge over the native rocks behind Ruby Creek put in where the vapor teepees rise. Now in the big brown country, as Dave's fly boat drifter slips into the stream, memories taunt on lines snag my soul and net my heart. Memories taunt on lines snag my soul and net my heart. Caught, not released in nature's dance, and I am pulled again into the Madison memories, flashing right like rising trout, streamer madness and muscle browns drenched in the valley golden rhapsody. We drift into the sun and shadows until goodbye. Soul dust, okay?
Since Paul
All right.
read a day song, I will read from a similar one from Imbolc, which if folks don't know, this is the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, when the life in the ground starts churning back up again. So I'll read a little bit of this. 12:02 p.m. Just keep checking in to keep the wheels spinning, this momentum of voice. I keep talking to keep myself alive to this thought. Where did it come from? From me? From outside me? From the world? The poem is trying to hold it all together. How much dharma can a day hold? Or how much can it flow in its current? And here comes Orpheus bobbing up, a warning against the impulse to look elsewhere, to distrust the movement, lose sight of the pattern which holds us together, that gravity that shapes the universe. This is my body, that is my body, coheres at this moment, mind-bound, all myriad cells and atoms and nuclei. In another moment I may drop, briefly return, slightly different. I reincarnate with each new concentration. How many eyes have I been today? 12:22 p.m. I talked myself into a corner, lost the music again, a recurrence of premises with some monotony, failed to feel the mind moving the wheel. I looked back and Eurydice was gone. Go on, Gawain, time to listen in again. Science and poetry, mathematics and words, intellect and imagination, mind and body, they are old, they are tidy, they are mistaken. Sewell was right. You can't keep them separated. Poetry is cosmology, song that sounds the world. Hey, hey, come out and play. Do, 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 do. You gotta keep them in solidarity. That pattern that connects the parts makes them whir. 1:14 p.m. The river in the sky is shifting and Apollo is greening the grass while my stomach absorbs some root and fungus wisdom. When Hipparchus fixed that beast circle to the birth-death cycle, this Imbolc death rattle yoked worked itself to air, to a water bearer, to sustained breathing, which Olson said was the way to the heart, the line, how the utterance became wholly exchanged, this body, this blood, this word made flesh, a vessel of spirit circulating rivers and mountains without end, without destination. If you fall in, it's best to embrace the current, go where it takes you. Like that time in college, I translated that last letter of Paul's before he lost his head in Rome. I stumbled upon a participle, graphe, something scratched, crawled, marked down, all that jazz to preserve the word, that double of speech trapped like a spell, waiting to be released into air, something like a poem on a page. And here's this old anti-heretic facing his own Orphic fate at the hands of state power, giving up the game. All that is written is God-breathed, but the church wouldn't listen, and neither would old Timothy. That cat tried to reject the great mother coming through, and they stoned him with bull's testicles up to his ears. Didn't hear the wild voice. With God, was God, and so it goes.